Hello, bonjour, Alberta. Did you know that at least 238,000 people speak Français in Alberta? And those numbers just keep on growing? Oui, oui, c'est vrai, it's true. And thanks to Shaw TV Community Access Programming, we get to reach out to everyone to let you know all about special people, places, events, and activities happening right here in this great province, in both English and en français. That's right, mes amis. We begin the first part of our program in English, and then we repeat it en français. So stay with us. Restez à l'écoute.
Hello, bonjour, Alberta. I'm Anne Boiteau.
And I'm Marc Lalonde.
And we are in season 11, celebrating the 60th anniversary of the twinning of the cities of Calgary and Quebec City. And we have a very special guest with us tonight. We have Minister Ricardo Miranda.
That's right.
Welcome.
Okay, Minister of Culture and Tourism for
right.
Alberta.
That's right.
Welcome, Minister.
Thank you.
And also responsible for the Francophone Secretariat.
That's right.
Yes.
And the MLA. Keep reading there.
Yes. And Minister Miranda used to be, before you were minister, you were the chair of the Standing Committee on Alberta's economic future.
That's right.
And also a member of the Select Special Ethics and Accountability Committee.
That's right.
And the Standing Committee on the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund.
My
That's
goodness.
Lots of hats.
Yeah. Now I'm a little less busy these days. That's actually been just a minister. It's a lot of work, a lot of good work that's being continued by some of my colleagues. But now I get to work specifically within culture and tourism, and the Francophone Secretariat, which is also a lot of exciting work ahead of us.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Were you born in Calgary, raised in Alberta?
Yeah, well,
maybe?
actually, I came to Calgary in 1988 from Nicaragua. I came here as a refugee, actually. And I came in 88, actually the same year that the Pandas were in the year of the Olympics as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of correlation, having become Minister of Culture and Tourism and now talking about pandas in the city, which is kind of exciting. I actually grew up in this area where the studios are. Calgary Northeast. I grew up lived in Temple, Whitehorn, Vista Heights, Pine Ridge, Rundle. So all the communities that make up Calgary-Cross.
You know it well.
Yeah, and now I live in Temple, which is where I've lived for the past 16 years now, and where I foresee living for a long time. So it's great to be in my own community.
And you also speak French.
Yes.
Where did you learn French?
Funny story. When we first came to Canada, my parents saw the signs at the airport were written both in English and French. And being Spanish speaking, they figured, French is going to be a lot easier for them to learn in school. So when we got registered in school, we just got put into French immersion and slowly just progressed from there. So. Yeah.
So French immersion just keeps coming up every week.
Well, it's great, and actually through university, I had the opportunity, actually before university, I had the opportunity to go to Trois-Rivières and Montreal as well. And then during university, I also got the opportunity to go to l'UQAM. So just an opportunity every time that I was in the education system to just take more French, and it helped because I ended up becoming a flight attendant with Canadian Airlines first and then Air Canada. So French was very useful to have.
Now, of course,
yes,
of course.
Yes.
And how did you get into politics after all that?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was, like I mentioned, a flight attendant for many years. And through there, the work I was doing with my colleagues, I became involved with the union and ended up becoming, I think I started with one committee, just like you mentioned. And then with that committee work, went secretary treasurer, then vice president, and then I became the president of a local union and negotiated collective agreements. So the more you did that, the more politically involved you become. And then I was recruited into the national union as a negotiator, and then eventually as a to do investigations. So I was the researcher for the province of Alberta. And from that work, here I am.
You got asked to run for the NDP, and
I did. I actually asked them.
oh, wow.
I was interested, always was, and so I put my name forward, and I got a phone call and saying, "So we hear you want to be a candidate," and I said, "Yeah." So how do I do that? Because I had worked in campaigns before. I had been a volunteer, and I've always been a member. But this time I decided that since I've grown up in this area, and I wasn't thinking of moving anytime soon, that I would just put my name forward to be a candidate.
And this was your first election, wasn't it?
That's right.
So did you have a feeling that maybe this was the one?
You know, you always, every time you put your name on a ballot, always you do it with the intention of winning.
Of course.
And so every time I went out and talked to people, they were saying things to me like, well, I'm not sure, maybe, you know, there was just a lot of hesitation. And then sometime halfway through the election period, things changed. And there wasn't, I don't know that there was a particular moment when it changed, but definitely there was a change. And people were saying, you know, come back to me. Talk to me again in a couple of days.
Time for a change.
Yeah, and so the more opportunities I had to talk to people, the more I had the opportunity to tell them about what I thought, you know, we needed to do in this province, in this community. And so election night, I, like many other people in Alberta, were very hopeful for change, and we did get it. So it's exciting.
So did you find there was a big learning curve when you got to Parliament? Like, other people get a chance to become, you know, a politician for a few years before they're
a minister.
They're minister,
Yeah.
or they're,
Much out of
you
the
know,
gate, yeah.
chair of a large committee, or
Yeah.
a lot of things to.
A lot of things to learn, yeah. And you know what, we're very lucky because there's a lot of people who work in the public service who serve as the historical memory of how things run in the different files that need to be followed through.
So they provide continuity.
Absolutely. You know, we have a perfect system in this country that allows for the changing of governments to take place without, you know, the system collapsing. So that was very useful to us, and we haven't had a change in government we hadn't had a change in 44 years.
Yeah,
so there were so many questions as to what happened. So it was a little bit for them as much as it was for us, a learning opportunity, but it did work out. And being in bargaining with a national union and being a researcher does provide the opportunities to do a little bit of lobbying, for example. And so I was not unfamiliar with the way that things worked in the legislature.
Just on the other side of the desk now.
And I keep telling the same story because only a few weeks before I was actually in the legislature lobbying the Minister of Education against the proposed cuts. In that previous winter, I had been outside protesting the changes that were being proposed to pension plans. So I was familiar with what happened outside, but now I'm becoming more acquainted with what happens
Behind
on
the scenes,
inside.
exactly.
Oh,
Well,
good
before we go into
background,
more
yeah.
of that, I'm sure our viewers would very much like to hear a little bit more about the speech you recently gave in Banff, I believe it was, as a result of the horrible, tragic situation in Orlando.
You know, what happened in Alberta in May 5th of last year was historical in many ways. In the city of Calgary, for example, I and MLA Michael Connolly, the MLA for Calgary-Hawkwood, along with our colleague from Strathcona-Sherwood Park, Estefania Cortez Vargas, were the first LGBTQ members to ever be elected to the legislature in the history of this province.
3 at once.
3, all overnight. You know,
That's a
we made
change.
history. It was historic.
Yeah.
But what it did make was give an opportunity for a community that had been marginalized for many years, that had fought for many years for recognition in many respects, to have a voice in government, which had never been the case before. And so the night of the massacre in Orlando, in fact, the Premier of Alberta and I, along with many members of our colleague, were at a gay bar in Calgary. And
Just by coincidence.
well, no, we were having a fundraiser,
Sure.
and she came in, and when I was actually up front making some sort of speech, I turn over and I see the Premier with a beer in her hand, and she's waving, and I said, "Oh, here we have the Premier of Alberta, which the community was completely ecstatic because that's something that's never happened, right, in the city. So it was very historic, and then we went, we went on our way, and then we learned of what had happened, which was, yeah, it was absolutely a shock. It was, in many respects, something that, of course, you never expect something like that to happen, but for us it was just a very sobering moment, to be in a moment where here we are and we've come so far, and just in an instant all of that feels like you've never made any movement whatsoever, because you're right back to the place where you were before, concerned about your safety, concerned about your well-being, concerned about your community, and so all those things were very unfortunate, and so yes, I had the opportunity to, a couple of days after, to say some words at an event that I was in and reflect on what had just happened, and yeah, it was very, again, sobering, heartbreaking.
Do you feel now, because you're in the public eye more, that do you feel scared
At risk?
or
Yeah.
at risk?
No, I think, I think that there are always going to be elements in society that take things too far. And unfortunately that happens everywhere. I do think that as politicians we have an obligation to ensure that what we put out and the rhetoric that is used doesn't inflame the fires, right, of people taking things into, well, taking it too far. So we do have that, but I think that for somebody who has lived in the closet for some period, when you come out of the closet, it's a very liberating experience and not something you ever want to go through again. So I don't think you would do yourself any service by going back and hiding, because now you live your truth, and so that is very liberating. And so I'm not afraid. Of course, there are people who worry, as they always do, and there are concerns, of course, for my family. But I think this country is beautiful. I think most people, 99.9% of the people, are very accepting, and certainly what I've seen in my community has been the exact opposite of that. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't say that I was concerned, but
So as Minister of Culture and Tourism, what is your biggest challenge, do you think?
Certainly the economy right now is something that everybody is thinking about, but the beauty about culture and tourism is that it's one of the bright spots in the economy. It's doing extremely well. People still go out when things are bad. Sure. People still go out to the movies, they still go out to the theater, they still go out to the museum, and especially right now the Canadian dollar is prompting a lot of people to stay at home and actually see the province rather than take that vacation to the States or overseas. They're going to have a lot of...
Good for the country.
It's absolutely
it's
great.
Bringing in also Americans and other foreigners, yes.
So the challenge for us is to continue providing the support that we can to the industry, growing our destinations, like we have invested in the Calgary Zoo, the expansion to bring the pandas.
Okay.
We've brought funding into the Fort Edmonton to provide an Indigenous people's feature, to expand it and to actually have more of people from Treaty 6 to actually be cultural interpreters, to provide a very authentic, people want authentic experiences.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening throughout. Just at the end of this month, June 30th, we're going to have the first direct flights from Beijing to Calgary.
Yes.
So it's bringing a whole new group of people directly to the city.
Minister, that's all the time we have. I'm sorry, but stay with us. We will be continuing en français.